about $210,000 they thought was missing. That turned out to just be a typo in the Excel spreadsheet, and no money is missing. So just want to make sure everybody knows no money is missing.
Good. Thank you for addressing that.
That's all I have, Mr. Bodie. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We've got the Codes, Building, and Zoning. Mr. Burke, Mr. Nicely.
Yeah, first one on the vicious dog ordinance. I believe Mr.
Cahill, I got it.
Go over that.
It's all right, man.
What's your name?
I can't see anyway. So, yeah, so the vicious dog ordinance, we actually looked at that with the new recodification. We do not have a vicious dog ordinance. It's actually vicious animal. Our recommendations was to stay with that and not add any amendments to it, so.
Okay. It's not breed specific.
Right,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Let me go with the group home rentals. So also, I believe that we're looking at Mr. Gatlin was going to be working on some information for us for the group home rentals. We were going to try to mimic some of the information that was put out there. It was a good meeting on that. We just want to make sure that we are following the rule of the law with that when we're determining how to allow these to come into the city. So, and that's our recommendation, is to wait for that information. That's all I have, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, sir. I've got a couple things here. We'd like to call a committee meeting to discuss a zoning issue concerning transient rentals in a residential zone. And a committee meeting to get an update on the transferring of city-owned property on Cowley Avenue and on Woodward. And Dave Hahn did send out a report to everybody. Anybody got any questions? You can get a hold of Dave Hahn. That's all I've got. You got anything?
What was on Cowley?
The property, getting rid of that property, where them houses are, them two old houses.
When are they going to do it?
Do you know? That's what we're discussing.
That's why it's back on discussion for the 20th of, okay, to let council discuss that further.
That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. All right, you've heard the reports of the committees. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Skidmore. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, the reports of representatives. Is there any reports this evening? Mrs. Kyle?
Yes, the Historical Society, the next meeting is June 14th. The agenda will be first, Kentucky Museum and Heritage Alliance Conference, report on all the new things happening in the museum industry. Second, party like it's 1792. Kentucky celebrates its 225th birthday. And third, the annual yard sale scheduled for August 5th. And just a reminder, volunteers meet every Thursday morning from 10 until noon, and that's at the depot. All are welcome to join, help with inventory, displays, general office duties, and filing. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Mrs. Skidmore had her hand up.
Yes, and that just makes it nice because Kenton County Alliance is always on the same Tuesday that we have our meeting, so all the information is fresh. Kenton County Alliance meeting began at noon. This is a monthly meeting and usually lasts about 2 hours. Minutes were read from last month. The Butterfly Metamorphosis Project is complete. Lots of butterflies from the caterpillars as a result of this project. The 2016 KIP survey data is available. The results are statewide and regional. That means you can look at Kenton County, but you cannot look at the Erlanger-Ellesmere results. It's categorized by county. The website for the results is https://reacheval.com/project/Kentucky-incentives-4-preventative-KIP-survey.
Jeez,
okay.
Pete.
I'm sure you all remember
Kind of rolls
that,
off
right?
the
I
tongue.
got that down.
Can you send that to us?
It's right
Can we
there.
get a test on this after I get done?
Need to remember.
Oh my gosh.
And the neighborhood blitz to fight opiate has been successful. Erlanger had their event already. Crescent Springs event will be July 29th. Edgewood will be August the 19th. And Covington will do theirs on September 23rd. Latonia on September 24th. And South Covington will be October the 1st. Simon Kenton Youth received a grant for $1,500 to develop a prevention game. The game will debut at the Kenton County Fair on July 7 through 14 at the Kenton County Fairgrounds. Project Sticker Shock has almost been completed. Erlanger-Ellesmere schools are tobacco-free, and there are signs to be displayed. Ludlow schools are also tobacco-free. We listened to a lecture about human trafficking. Human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery. Lisa Ramstetter from Catholic Charities of Louisville provided a presentation about human trafficking. And just a few statistics. 1 of 3 girls are lured into prostitution within 48 hours of leaving home. 90% turn to sex within 3 months of being away from home. The longer they are gone, the more likely they are to engage in sex for money. Sometimes they are tricked into earning money for sex to pay the bills of where they are staying. Under KRS 529.010, that's a lot shorter number than the other thing was, minors involved in stripping, porn, and prostitution are victims per se. The website for that is rescueandrestorekentucky.org. Last but not least, Lisa Anglin has taken a position with St. Elizabeth Hospital to do some of the things that she is doing for Kenton County Alliance. In her interview, she said she would like to see the phone numbers and contacts for drug abuse help listed on the bottom of all patient discharge papers. The hospital loved the idea, and it has already been implemented. Oddly enough, there was a monetary grant available for up to $100,000 to get this message out there. Lisa got this done for free, and now Kenton County Alliance can hopefully come up with another idea for some of that grant money. We wish Lisa the best of luck along with all of her hard work. And John Sterling also attended this meeting, as he attends every monthly meeting of Kenton County Alliance as the police department rep, so we appreciate that. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Fetty?
For the Kentucky League of Cities, I just want to let everybody know about the KLC conference and expo that they're going to be having October 3rd through the 6th. It's actually going to be held in Covington, so it'll be really easy for us all to attend. It's the largest training event that's dedicated to the city officials and employees. So I plan to attend, and I'd love for all of you to join me.
Any other reports? I've got, let's see, PDS, we've got a meeting coming up, oh, I had mentioned that already, on June 22nd at 6 p.m. And then the mayor's group meeting this past month, I had brought information that I've shared with council about the tax rate comparison, city to city, using the same basis information and putting that parcel in every different city throughout, or not every, but 14 of the cities in the county, and comparing. I hadn't planned to present it necessarily, but I had been talking with the mayors about it for several months leading up to that. And our presenter ended up falling through that day, and so they punted me in the position, and I went ahead and presented it then. I do still have that information, and if you would like to ask any questions about it, I'm open to it, willing to talk about it. I've even had people say, you should do the same thing for a business too, you know, kind of make a, you know, the same information, size of the business, income, number of employees, things like that, and then kind of copy that into every city and see how that shakes out as well. I'll put that on my to-do list. Any other reports from committees? Okay, moving on, then we've got the reports of city operations. First, we've got the city engineer, Mr. Viox.
Yes, sir. We now have completed the Nelson Road sidewalk and project, and it turned out to be about approximately $3,000 less than we anticipated. So that was good news. Birch Drive, the final pavement was placed a couple of days ago, and there's a few driveways to restore, so that one is going to wrap up in the next week. Erlanger Road is getting close to completion. The delay there has been that we are trying to make sure that when we tear up the intersection of Baker Street and Erlanger Road, that it can be placed back in a very timely manner because of the volume of traffic through there. So the contractor's been working with the Public Works Department to coordinate that. We think that's going to occur this Thursday. We expect weather to be in a position to get it in and done without affecting the traffic too much. The sidewalk project at the underpass is moving along. You might have thought that there wasn't anything going on the last few days. The reason that nothing was going on then was they had to pour the walls and the footings for that, and that has to set up before they can backfill it. But they're starting on that, and I think they started today. That's looking very good. I hope you recognize the serpentine sidewalk and the wall and all that's going to be landscaped, including the landscaping is going to occur in front of the veterinarian on Dixie Highway, so that's going to change the entire appearance of that area. I would like to thank Councilperson Fetty for reading some of this stuff that I put on your desk. She was on top of it today and caught that I had the cover sheets reversed on the bids, and then Sherry jumped on it and repaired it before you all got a chance to review it. So I just wanted to thank them for cleaning up a mess that we made. That's all I have, sir.
All right, thank you. The city attorney, we've got Mr. Volker sitting in for Mr. Gatlin this evening.
Nothing to report other than Jack should be, I think he's driving back as we speak from Orlando after 10 days in Disney, so he'll probably need a vacation after that with his 4 children in Disney for 10 days, so thanks.
All right. City Council Attorney, Mr. Wickman.
I have nothing to report either, Mayor.
All right, thank you. City Administrator, Mr. Fields.
Yeah, under legislation, Mr. Parsons is going to be here and talk about some of the development stuff on the former Showcase property now with the Nair Company. Looking at that, there's a lot of legislation pertaining to that and the payment in lieu of taxes and us in issuing industrial revenue bonds. I believe there's one here for that also. If you have any questions about any of those, Mr. Parsons, I'm sure, will be more than willing to explain them the best he can. Also, the way I understand this is we need to have a special meeting on June 20th for the actual issuances of the bonds or another resolution to that. So I would ask that we have a special council meeting on the 20th, since we're not going to have one at the 1st of July, since that's the holiday, and it's going to be passed back. They have requested that we have a special meeting on the 20th to take care of the bond issue. So I'd like to ask for that. Also in the legislation, you're going to see an addendum to the waste collection. The waste collection, and the only thing it's doing is giving them more holidays. And during our negotiations a few years ago when we were talking to them, everybody remembers correctly, the only day they ever had off was Christmas. So we actually talked to the company and said, wouldn't you really like to give your employees Thanksgiving off? They said yes. Well, lo and behold, now they've come back and they've asked for the 4th of July, Memorial Day, and New Year's. And so that's the addendum on here, is to add those other 3 holidays to their schedule. We will not miss any collections. They'll all happen the day after the holiday. And, you know, when staff was recommending this to council, you know, our thought was, I don't know how many people are really worried about putting their trash out on the holidays. The next day would work just fine. So, and there was some miscommunication this past Monday because they were not supposed to be off this past Monday, and they were not. But some people got phone calls saying that they would be off, so there was some miscommunication. So they picked up double on Tuesday, just so everybody knows. So I hope nobody got missed that way. So they were kind of behind this week, but I think they've all caught up now. If you have any questions about that or you would like to pick on them, Mr. Wilson has volunteered to be here at the committee meeting on the 20th to field any questions, and I was just supposed to call him after tonight and let him know if he needs to show up. If he does, feel free to tell me, and we'll get him here for you all to talk to. As you all know, I sent out a letter last Thursday to you announcing my retirement September 1st. I will be here for the next 3 months, hopefully, and be here at the next couple meetings. I want to assure you that I'll be around to do anything to make this transition as smooth as possible to do. I know the timing was kind of sudden, but I have an opportunity that I am going to go explore, and the timing just fit right with that. So I hope we all know I'll still be a resident here. I may be sitting out there sometime and saying things, hopefully. But good things, of course. But I want you all to know, I'll say this in a couple months instead of tonight. But I meant everything I said in the letter. It's been a complete honor to be here. There has been, I couldn't have dreamed that this would have been the way it was. It's been a pleasure, and I hope it continues that way for an awful long time. So I will miss coming to these meetings and seeing these smiling faces as they're going like this back there. I mean, but, you know, 31 years, it's been a great ride for me, and I hope the next couple months we'll get that transition and get it done to be smooth. So if you need anything of me before then, please reach out. Thank you.
God bless you, Mark.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mark, for all you've
Yeah, I
done.
think we can all agree it's been, I can certainly say it's been my honor to work with you.
Well, thank you.
These past few years. It's been incredible for me to realize that somebody can handle what Mark does on a daily basis with such ease, or at least he makes it look easy, and that's an incredible thing.
Thank you.
All right, so you've heard the reports of our representatives and city operations. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt, or not adopt, excuse me, yeah, adopt as presented? I saw Mrs. Kyle's hand first, and Mr. Cahill. Second by Mr. Cahill. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, Mrs. Hoffman, is there any correspondence this evening?
No, sir.
All right. Are there any citizen or public comments? Go ahead, Linda, while we're looking for the list. Excuse me, Ms. Dietz.
I wanted to oh, that's all right.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
I wanted to comment about this is a beautiful pamphlet that Joe and Kim, I think, put together. I wanted to mention one thing about the city logo, which looks really nice, except that representing where a state is, something is with a yellow star is actually not done anymore on maps, because we're now into the age of maps being online, and they don't use yellow stars on maps anymore. There's no yellow stars on this map, and now they've gone to the other, like a balloon. So if you guys are gonna keep the star, I would suggest that you not have it be yellow, because yellow stars aren't used anymore, and at least make it a blue star to match the rest of the state. It'll be against the gray. It'll look much nicer and much more sophisticated. It looks fine this small, but on the bags they gave out at the Touch-A-Truck, it did not look nice, looked tacky, the yellow star. And if you have a flag outside with a huge yellow star, it's gonna look even tackier. So just consider changing the star. You may have to move it down a little bit to get off the border of the state, but make it the same blue as our bluegrass state to match that. It'll look much more sophisticated going into the future.
Thank you.
Just one thought. At the latest committee meeting, the issue was brought up by Mayor Hermes about the facilities and fire station location study about that vendor being paid before the product was delivered to us. And I agree with his concerns about that. I have concerns about that, not only being on the committee, but also being a taxpayer of the city. So I would like to request, and I'll come up tomorrow morning and request it formally with, I guess with Steve and whoever else I need to ask for. I'd like to do a little investigation into that, and I'd like to get a copy of the contract, the general ledger entries, the time and date stamp of when the product came in, and actually look at the large reports. I know there's a master report. Because as Vicki Kyle said, you know, that's taxpayers' money. And the mayor even said, well, thank goodness we got the report, but I don't think that's good enough. And like Vicki Kyle said, if that was something she was having done in her house, She certainly would not have paid until the work was done, and that same should apply here. So I think it definitely warrants a bit of a research on my part on behalf of the citizens of Erlanger, so.
Okay, I
I'll come
appreciate
up tomorrow
that.
morning and get that information. That'll be all right?
Yeah, I think that would be best if it was through an open records request. But I
Okay.
do want to clarify, they weren't paid in whole, in full.
Okay.
Sure.
But I just want to get a copy of all that and do my own little investigation on
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
After that committee meeting and those statements were made, I had Mr. Bodie pull all of these payments. I do not have the contract here in front of me. But first check was presented to them or written on July or September 7th. The bill date was August 30th. And this is the reason why. Right here. The facilities assessment was 90% complete at that time. Okay?
And they were paid something to even to get started, too.
This is the first check that they were written. The second one happened on October 19th. Please,
I'm gonna stop
can
you,
I,
Mark. Let me
can I
stop-
finish just
No,
one
let me
second?
just stop for a minute. I don't
Why?
care
Why
what,
would I let you do
because
that?
I don't care what you have to say tonight. I just want to get the information for myself tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm
Well,
not even going to
that's
write any of
fine.
it down. I just want to get it tomorrow, and I can
Well,
address it
I don't want
at
you
the
to write
next
it down.
council
You
meeting.
come up tomorrow and we'll give it to
But
you.
when, it doesn't matter what you say right now. I just want to see it for myself.
I still think Mark,
More than happy to.
I would still like to hear what Mark
I would
has
sure
to
like
say.
to tell the rest of council. Okay?
Mark, can you continue, because we would like to hear.
I will. So the next check was written to them, okay, on October 19th, and it was because the firehouse location study was 50% completed. Okay. So the next check was written on December 2nd, and that's because the firehouse location study was 100% complete. The facilities assessment study was completed by 90%. So we wrote them another check. The final check that we wrote them was on 3/22 of 17, and we received the final report on February 1st. So it was all final, both were final, and that was the final payment we made. So I don't want anybody thinking that we paid these people before we had a final product. We paid them at stages through the process, and I believe the contract, and Mr. Bodie can talk about that if he'd like, but I believe that these are exactly the specifics that the contract called for. And these are the checks, the invoices, and the payment records right here.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
All right, we do have a few other people signed up to speak this evening. Mr. Meyer? Okay. Mr. Steve Nicely?
I just want to thank the fire chief and his great crew for the help that I received a couple weeks ago. Great job. Thank you.
All right. And then Mr. Leo Calderon? Is he present? Mr. Leo from Hurstbourne? Is that him out in the lobby? Nope, okay. All right. Well, it looks like he's not here. Anybody else that wasn't signed up would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the bids. First one is our Perimeter Drive bid. Mr. Viox?
Yes, sir. I'll point out that the two bids that I'm going to present to you are projects that will be paid for in this coming year's budget. We're jump-starting this so we can tie up contractors and be ready to start the work as soon as possible. The first project is the Perimeter Drive reconstruction, Phase 1. That project, we're tying up the contractor so he can start as of August the 1st due to the fact that their water district is in the process of, with their contractor, of rebuilding the entire water system in that street. And their schedule is to complete that at the end of July, so we want our contractor to be able to move in quickly so we can get that street replaced before possibly Thanksgiving. So with that, if you turn to the second sheet, We only had two bidders, JPS Construction, actually the third sheet's a total, $324,026.50. The second bidder was M&W Excavation Company at $380,615. If you go back to the cover sheet, which I told you we erroneously put in the wrong place this afternoon, the total project will be $27,063 under the budget and under the estimate that we did in February. So I recommend the work be awarded to JPS Construction Incorporated.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'll mention that includes some extra work. You can see there approximately $20,000, so we're going to try to get as much work as we can out of this contractor.
Awesome.
So can we get a motion? Motion by Mr. Cahill, second by Mrs. Sudkamp. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Next is the Woodland Hills bid.
Yes, sir. Again, this is in next year's budget. However, this one, there's nothing to keep the contractor from getting started. We certainly wouldn't pay the contractor before the next month, so if we can get a jump start on this one, we're going to try to get it done. We had, go to your second sheet. We had a number of bidders here. M&W Excavation, well, it's really a third sheet. M&W Excavation at $220,408.75. JPS Construction at $225,022.50. Paul Michaels and Sons was third at $235,897.75. And TMS Construction Incorporated at $254,388. If you go back to the front sheet, you'll notice at the bottom that this is $18,867 under the budget and under the estimate I did in February, and that does include $10,000 worth of extra work. I'll recommend that we award the work to M&W Construction, or Excavation.
All right, do we have a motion by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Blankenship? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. And then we've got the Keiko salt bid.
Do you have that, Mr. Viox, or is that me? I have the salt bid? Okay. So the City of Erlanger Public Works Department participated in the Kentucky Association of Counties reverse auction for bulk road salt on 5/10/17. We received bids from Morton Salt, YEC LLC, Detroit Salt Company, Compass Minerals Americas Incorporated, and Cargill De-icing Technology. At this time, the lowest bid was at $54 per ton for a 1,000-ton allotment through Morton Salt. Our recommendation is that we take that. The highest bid was at 100, and we had varying them from like $54.50 to $61 and $64. We will be participating also in the Kenton County Purchasing Group as well at a $55 per ton. It's a secondary source. We're not obligated to purchase either of these full amounts. So our recommendation right now for the reverse salt bid is the Morton Salt at $54 per ton.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Sudkamp. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. I think, Mr. Milliken, did you tell me that that was substantially less than what we paid last year for salt?
Yes, sir. Last year was 60.
Wow. That's great. That's huge. Yeah. Haven't used it for the last 2 years. Yeah, thank you. All right, so do we have any old business to discuss?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I inadvertently left two huge things off involving the fire department. I apologize. Please. The officers collected for Special Olympics at Dunkin' Donuts Cop on a Roof fundraiser. They weren't on the roof, but they raised $1,146 for Special Olympics, so that's very impressive. And I went to the police memorial ceremony, and I'm telling you what, our guys, the turnout was absolutely breathtaking. They far surpassed any other department, and boy, they looked sharp. I was really proud to be there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any other old business to discuss? Any new business? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the legislation. First is an ordinance regarding the recodification. This is the second reading.
It's an ordinance of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, adopting by reference the codification Erlanger ordinances prepared and published by American Legal Publishing Corporation. By summary, pursuant to the requirements of the Kentucky statutes, the codification of the cities need to be reviewed and revised, and every 5 years. We were a little bit dilatory in getting that done, but we finally got it done, and this is the ordinance adopting the codification that has been presented to the city by American Legal Publishing. I don't know if we have a copy here, Sherry?
I have a copy to
in your
attach
office?
to it.
Yep,
yes.
okay. Second reading.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Sedkamp. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fetty?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sedkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, motion carried. Next is an ordinance regarding the amended fiscal year 17 budget. This is the second reading.
This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger, amending Erlanger ordinance number 2435 and the budget adopted thereby for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1st, 2016 and ending on June 30th, 2017. In summary, this is just an ordinance to amend the changes that have occurred throughout the year to the previously adopted budget.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Blankenship, second by Mr. Montgomery. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sedkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fetty?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, motion carried. The next is an ordinance regarding the fiscal year 18 budget. This is also a second reading.
This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger, adopting a budget for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1st, 2017, and providing that no money shall be expended by or on behalf of the City of Erlanger except in accordance with that adopted budget. In summary, as I believe Councilman Blankenship referenced, I think the committee's reviewed this. This is the recommended adoption of the budget that's proposed, and this is here for second reading, final approval for next year's budget.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Fetty, second by Mr. Blankenship. Any discussion? And this is also a roll call vote.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fetty?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sedkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, motion carried. Next is an ordinance regarding the employee pay and classification. This is also a second reading.
It's an ordinance of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, establishing a personnel pay and classification plan for all Erlanger employees and non-elected city officers. Attached to the ordinance is a document entitled Job Titles and Position Count for 2017-2018, which identifies all the job classifications in the city and the number of authorized employees thereof. There's also attached a wage scale for 2018, which establishes the compensation range for each position of employment in the city.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mr. Nicely. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Miss Fetty,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Pitts,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Kyle,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Skidmore,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Sudcamp,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, motion carried. Next is a municipal order regarding the accounting procedures.
This is a municipal order of the City of Erlanger adopting the accounting policies and procedures manual, which is attached for your review to this proposed municipal order.
All right, do I entertain a motion that we adopt? Motion by Mrs. Fetty, second by Mr. Blankenship. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Municipal order, the next is a municipal order regarding an addendum to the waste collection agreement that Mr. Field spoke about earlier.
This is a municipal order of the City of Erlanger authorizing the mayor enter into an addendum to the agreement dated 6/11/2015 with Republic Services of Ohio Hauling LLC related to the City of Erlanger's solid waste collection.
All right, a motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Sudcamp. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, then we skip ahead to the resolution of the Alnire inducement.
As the mayor advised earlier, Mr. Jim Parsons is here, who's handling the bonds that are subject to be issued, and we thought it best to let him answer those questions. Bond is a specialized area of law that I know Jim, I think, does exclusively, and thought it best for him to take it from here.
Mayor and members of the council, and this is basically what we call an inducement resolution. It's basically a resolution of the city's intent to issue industrial building revenue bonds for the project, for the Erlanger Commerce Center project. This document actually is in accordance with the development agreement you approved previously, and where you would agree to issue industrial revenue bonds. Just for your information and for the public, industrial revenue bonds are really private financing that is structured in a public bond format, but the debt, the bonds issued are totally responsibility of the project. The city has no responsibility for their payment. This is just a process that is utilized to provide an incentive to the project as it moves forward. The agreements in place, the memorandum of agreement and the agreement in lieu of taxes are consistent with the development agreement, and the terms are exactly the same as the development agreement you previously approved. Relative to that, just for informational purposes, the reason this was moved up on the agenda is because the resolution actually approves the agreement in lieu of taxes and the memorandum of agreement. So those were documents those were already incorporated. The memorandum of agreement is an exhibit to the resolution, and the agreement in lieu of taxes is an exhibit to the memorandum of agreement. So that's why those items were moved up. This resolution should take care of items 7 and 8 on your agenda. It's all the same process relative to that. So again, this would authorize the bonds. Where this particular process, as we anticipate closing on the bonds sometime in July. That's why we're requesting that at your next caucus meeting, or whatever you call the special meeting, so we could have the actual 2 different resolutions on the actual bonds being issued. This document does not issue bonds. This is just an intent to issue bonds, but there'll be at your next meeting 2 bond resolutions that would authorize the actual bonds for the project.
Okay. All right, so then can we get a motion to allow me to sign the resolution of inducement? Moved by Mr. Blankenship, second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion?
Mayor, I'm sorry, I did want to introduce Ryan Reardon with Alnire LLC. He is here tonight if there's any specific questions about the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as Mr. Parson explained, that covers number 7 and number 8 on the agenda as well. So we'll move to number 9 as it was printed, the municipal order for PDS agreement.
This is a municipal order of the City of Erlanger authorizing the mayor to enter in an agreement for, quote, one-stop shop services with planning development services of Kenton County related to the City of Erlanger's GIS mapping, analytics services, and vacant foreclosed property registry services. This is just authorizing the mayor to enter into the current one-stop shop agreement being presented to each city in Kenton County.
This is the same agreement for every city? Is that correct?
No, what they've gone to is kind of a cafeteria-style plan. So there are some cities that have checked off more services at PDS, some use them for codes enforcement, building inspection, things like that. We don't. The services that we are currently use them for are just the GIS. The vacant property one is a new ordinance. It's a county ordinance that just went into effect this past year. We'll be able to get data from that one. There's absolutely no charge to these services for us, but they wanted us to go through these steps of adopting this for them for some reason. This is the first year that I know that they've done this.
I was in Independence last night and they had the same question. Haven't we already, by interlocal agreement, agreed? But it's just one of those things PDS is asking. I don't see any harm in it.
Okay. All right, so can we get a motion? Moved by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Montgomery. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, then, seeing nothing else, then I would ask, do I entertain a motion that we adjourn? Motion by Mr. Blankenship, second by Mr. Nicely. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.